I got a call 2 or 3 days after it happened from my brother-in-law.
I was driving in my car, my sister called me and told me that my son Benjamin was hurt.
She initially started crying and she said, "Allison, I have some really bad news."
Detectives came to the door. There was a horrific accident.
I called the hospital. I got very brief information, but the word coma and the term traumatic brain injury were mentioned.
And then we started our vigil of just waiting, and he had surgery after surgery.
You're just at the hospital every hour of the day, and then you're hearing from people from all angles, doctors coming in and saying words I've never understood before.
There's language that's being spoken that you've never heard before, and there's a really horrible physical phenomenon that's happening to someone you love.
Somebody has been taken from you in an instant. You know nothing about comas, you know nothing about traumatic brain injuries. There are 1,000 procedures that are going on with your loved one.
The first couple of weeks is going to be the hardest because there's that, what am I going to do now? Where's the money coming from? How am I paying my bills?
Everybody is in shock after something like this. And that's a very difficult stage. And you don't want to believe, in fact, that anything has happened and that the world is really turned upside down.
Taking care of somebody who has a traumatic brain injury sometimes leads people to feel depressed or anxious because they don't really know what to expect.
I knew very little about traumatic brain injuries before my sister suffered hers.
I had no idea what TBI was. I had no idea what they told me when they said he was in a comatose state, he was in a vegetative state.
Where the tide turned for me, from sort of self-pity and feeling victimized to being strengthened and a little bit proactive, so I started to educate myself.
Education is, I think, the key to this whole thing for the caregiver, the caregiver or the family members, the loved ones.
I remember just trying to find any reading information I could.
It started with pamphlets in the visitor's room, and then I went out and bought a book down the street from the hospital.
The more that you know, the more that you're going to be able to understand what's happening with your loved one and also help them to get better in all different areas.
This is your loved one. This is devastating. You should know as much information from these doctors, nurses, aides, whomever it is, neurologists. Ask.
Never think that you're intrusive, because we do welcome family support, and that's very important.
We definitely want the family member to know that, between the patient and themselves, they are the most important members of our team.
We are with them maybe 3 hours a day, and then the family members are with them for a majority of the day, so they can give us information that we're not even aware of.
They can understand, the changes in behaviors they may witness, the changes in personalities, the changes in function. So the more that we're able to communicate, share with them the progress that this individual is making, making them part of this process, keeping them informed, the better outcome we are going to achieve for everybody.
One of the most important things when a patient is recovering from a traumatic brain injury is family support. And there are studies to suggest that individuals that have great family support end up having better outcomes.
It's so important for that family member to be a part of the recovery process, not only for support of their loved one, but to carry over what we're doing in therapy.
What better way for a family member to learn how to help their loved one than to have that hands-on experience?
The brain is an extremely complicated organ. It's probably the most complicated organ in the body. As a result, recovery from a brain injury takes a long period of time and is rather a complex phenomenon.
We're looking at physical therapy, speech therapy, neuropsychology, occupational therapy, nursing, physician, therapeutic recreation. There's so many different disciplines that are integral to managing the care and meeting the needs of each individual with a brain injury.
When people say, will I ever be able to work again? Will I ever be able to drive again? And will I be the person I was? We can say to them, well, what piece would be most important for you? What's the most important goal? And let's figure out what you have to do to get there.
People will ask, how long will it take for my family, my loved one to be walking again or doing the things that they were doing before?
It depends on the extent of the injury, on where it is, the injury is in the brain, on how long it took them to get help.
Each patient is different. The recovery is different. You can't measure it in, weeks or months. You just take each small step as progress.
It's not easy to hear that question mark is the answer, but one day at a time is what I tell my patient.
It's important to remember that maybe a tough day isn't necessarily a setback at all.
It doesn't mean you're starting over. Sometimes there's good days, sometimes there's bad days, like anyone.
Keep the positive attitude, whether it's the family or whether it's the patient. The strength of the positivity and the focus on the future is always going to help that person more than frustration and pain and agony.
A sign of success is that the patient shows up, that they're there to work, they're willing to work, and they want to get better.
Even though a patient might not be walking again, going up and down stairs again, that there can still be a decent quality of life. People can have that independence back.
It's so easy to want to help and losing sight of your own needs for self-care.
Your impulse is to be by their bedside 24/7, waiting for a sign, wanting to be there every moment they wake up.
I felt very guilty for doing anything, like going on vacation with my family or really just moving on with life.
We had expended almost all of our emotional currency, and this was now killing us.
Before you can offer help to that person you love, you have to take care of yourself. And that includes 3 things, and they're simple things, but they're things that are so easy to forget. Sleep, eating, and exercise.
Yes, the individual with a brain injury is going through this process, but as a family member and a caregiver, they are going through this process as well.
You're in this emotionally tense state constantly, and no one can sustain that.
As your loved one is going up and down that roller coaster from hell, okay, and they're going forwards and backwards and forwards, as they're doing this, you have to learn to do this. You have to stay in the middle.
I believe that the role of the citizen is to get involved when asked. So I was always active in my community. So I became active in the TBI community.
Find out where the nearest support group is and call that group leader and tell them what's going on and ask for advice.
Once I did that, I connected with people that are in the same situation as I am.
The people in the support group, and especially the support group leader, will tell you things that nobody else is telling you. And they will tell it to you in the most real-world kind of way and give you the most practical information possible.
The family and friends that we connected through the support groups were our new life.
And I only learned this years later. It's going to get better. it may not be what you expect, but it will get better.
The brain has a way of, bouncing back. And so each small step is encouraging.
My mom had a traumatic brain injury. She was in a coma. She was a pianist. And 8 years afterwards, she went back to play the piano.
Individuals that do suffer a traumatic brain injury, the majority of them do get better. It just takes time.
So there's always hope. And you never give up your hope, ever. There's no reason to.
There is going to be improvement, and it is going to get better for everyone.
If you're in a rowboat and you're 300 miles offshore and you don't think you're gonna make it, you ain't making it. But if you believe you're gonna make it, you got a chance. Just keep rowing.
There's definitely life after injury.